The folding chair, the smell of roasted turkey and cinnamon pie, filled my mother's house the same way it had every Thanksgiving for as long as I could remember. But that year, at 29, it didn't feel like tradition anymore. It felt like theater, a performance staged for neighbors, cousins, and friends who still believed my parents were the picture-perfect pillars of our community. The dining room buzzed with laughter and overlapping conversations. My aunts darted between the kitchen and table, balancing steaming trays of casseroles while bragging about their children's awards and scholarships. Uncle Tom monopolized the living room, booming about his latest promotion at work, while cousins huddled together, scrolling through vacation photos and making inside jokes that didn't include me. Holding a bottle of wine I'd purchased on my way over, waiting for someone, anyone, to notice me. My mother finally did, waving me toward a corner of the room. "There," she said with a dismissive flick of her hand. I followed her gesture. A metal folding chair leaned against the wall. Its vinyl seat cracked, its back bent slightly inward. It wasn't placed at the table. It wasn't even close. "That's where you belong," Mom said. "Out of the way." The words hit with an almost physical weight. My cousin Sarah smirked from the seat that used to be mine as a child. "Be grateful you're even invited," she added, laughing as though she delivered some clever punchline. I forced a thin smile, masking the sting. Then I looked at the table. 12 chairs, 12 people, but only 11 place settings. No plate for me. No fork. No napkin folded into a neat triangle. Mom caught me counting. "Don't worry," she said. "I'll grab you a paper plate from the kitchen." Paper. While everyone else would eat off the family's heirloom china, the dishes I'd scrubbed by hand since I was 8 years old. It wasn't the first time I'd been pushed aside. Ever since I'd chosen a career in social work instead of law, every holiday had been the same. Veiled comments about wasted potential, jokes about my apartment, subtle reminders that I hadn't lived up to the family standard. But this time, something cracked inside me. I excused myself to the bathroom, locked the door, and pulled out my phone. I thought about the private investigator I'd hired 3 months earlier. What started as curiosity about Mom's constant business trips and Dad's mysterious late nights had uncovered something darker than I'd imagined. The truth was written in forged documents, falsified accounts, and bank records from offshore accounts. My parents weren't respected community leaders. They were criminals. For 15 years, they had siphoned millions from Dad's law firm, laundering money through shell companies and stolen identities. Their success had been built on lies, and here I was, treated as an outsider because I had chosen honesty over ambition. When I stepped back into the dining room, the turkey was carved, the family seated, and my father clearing his throat for his annual speech on gratitude. My mother smiled with performative grace, arranging slices of meat on the platter. I reached into my jacket and pulled out a thick manila envelope, the evidence I'd been carrying for weeks. Without a word, I slid it under the turkey platter. Nobody noticed. Not yet. Mom glanced at me. "Are you going to sit down or just hover awkwardly all night?" "I'm leaving," I said. Her eyes narrowed. Always dramatic. Dad shook his head. "You're proving once again why you can't handle family situations maturely." I looked at each of them, memorizing the smug faces that had dismissed me for years. "This will be the last meal on me," I told them. They didn't understand. Not then, but they would. I turned, grabbed my coat, and walked out the door, just as the first snowflakes of the season began to fall.
The envelope under the turkey. I sat in my car, the November air frosting the windshield, as I watched them through the dining room window. My family laughed and filled their plates. blissfully unaware of what sat hidden beneath the golden, brown centerpiece of their feast. 20 minutes later, my phone buzzed. A text from Sarah, "Where did you go?" I ignored it, then Dad called. Then Mom twice. I let them all go to voicemail. Finally, Uncle Tom rang. His voice thundered through the receiver. "What kind of twisted prank is this? You left some envelope full of lies under the turkey platter. Your parents are devastated." I let the silence stretch. "They're not lies," I said evenly. "You might want to ask Mom and Dad about their trips to the Cayman Islands." The lying went dead that night. The family group chat exploded. Some accused me of destroying Thanksgiving with cruel fabrications. Others, confused and hesitant, asked me why I would do something so extreme. A few Aunt Linda. Cousin Mark admitted they weren't entirely shocked. They'd long wondered how my parents afforded their lavish lifestyle on a small-town lawyer's income. We met at a diner across town. Dad looked as if he aged a decade overnight. He leaned forward, eyes sharp but desperate. "Where did you get those documents?" he demanded from a private investigator. I said calmly he tried to explain it away. They borrowed money they'd intended to pay it back. It was complicated, but when I pressed him about the 15-year timeline and offshore accounts, he faltered. Then his tone shifted. "What do you want?" He asked money. Respect a better seat at the table. I met his gaze. "I want you and Mom to turn yourselves in. Report to the bar, make restitution to your clients." His jaw tightened. "You're naive. Destroying your parents won't improve your life. You'll lose family connections. Support everything. Don't be foolish." But his threats no longer held weight. I stood, placed cash for my coffee on the table, and said 48 hours. "Then I go to the authorities." He called after me as I walked out. "You're making the biggest mistake of your life." But for the first time, I wasn't sure it was my mistake. Truth over family, the fallout came fast. Within days, 5 clients filed complaints against Dad's firm. Aunt Carol, living in Florida, discovered her inheritance had been siphoned into accounts she'd never authorized by the end of the week. The State Bar Association launched a full investigation. What they uncovered dwarfed even my suspicions. Over $2 million stolen, carefully laundered through shell companies and offshore banks. My mother, who everyone thought of as a homemaker with a part-time business, had been just as involved. Her business trips had been money transfers across state lines. 3 months later, both of my parents were arrested. Fraud, embezzlement, money laundering, the charges piled high. The family fractured in response. Sarah LED'd the charge in blaming me. She called me a traitor. Said family loyalty should have come before dirty laundry. Others like Jake and Aunt Linda quietly apologized. They admitted they'd always suspected something, but lacked the courage to face it. At the trial, I sat in the back as my parents pled guilty. Dad received 4 years in federal prison. Mom, 3. Neither looked at me when the judge spoke their sentences. Walking out of that courtroom, I thought about the folding chair, shoved into the corner of the dining room, the place where I'd been told I belonged. They were right in a way. That chair was mine. It gave me the distance to see the truth. It reminded me that I didn't need their approval to know my worth. I hadn't lost a family that Thanksgiving. I'd lost the illusion of one. And in its place, I gained something far heavier, far lonelier, but far more honest. Freedom. Because sometimes the only way to stand tall is to sit where no one else wants you. And wait until the truth speaks louder than the lies.